Hi, Boa. Welcome to 10 Minute Talks. I'm Harshadeva.
For this episode of 10 Minute Talks, I'm really pleased to welcome Margarita Quihuis. Margarita is a strategic system architect, a behavior design expert, and co-founder of the Peace Innovation Lab at Stanford University. Her work sits at the intersection of technology, human behavior, social systems, and peace. She's known for helping shape the field of peace innovation, reframing peace not just as an idea, but as something we can observe, design, and practice in everyday life. Her work today focuses on how both digital and physical environments influence human behavior at scale, and how we can intentionally design systems that promote dignity, trust, cooperation, and human flourishing. Margarita has worked across Silicon Valley, venture capital, and executive education, and continues to advise leaders and institutions navigating rapid challenges from AI to climate challenges.
Margarita, thank you very much for joining me today. My first question is um, the digital world is expanding rapidly, bringing many technological advantages. At the same time, a new field is emerging, what we call digital peace building. From your experience, how would you explain what digital peace building really means and how can digital tools be used to build peace?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm really glad we're having this conversation because I think the phrase digital peace building, it's important, but it can also become vague very quickly, right? Just as people have different ideas about what peace is. So the first thing I want to do is start by making peace a bit more concrete. And that was one of the things that we needed to do at Stanford to even look at tackling something like peace because it's tended to be the domain of diplomats and politicians and statesmen and so on, political scientists, but not really from the lens of, like, say, psychology, engineering, design, science, right? So in our definition and how we look at peace, we think of it not simply as the absence of violence. So when you talk to people about peace building and peacekeeping, they're trying to make, decrease conflict, right? Make things less bad. From a behavioral standpoint, it's much easier and better to emphasize how can I increase what I want more of in the world, right? When we talk about peace, people tend to focus on the negative and how we want to decrease or stop particular actions or behaviors. But as a behavior designer, as an engineer, as a scientist, we are more effective in building things, getting people to do things, right? And so for us in the lab, peace is not simply the absence of violence, right? Peace is not just what happens when conflict stops. So peace is a set of behaviors. And when you start thinking about it, you go, well, what are the behaviors that when they happen in society add up to peace? So it could be trust building, reciprocity, repair in terms of a relationship. How do you recover from a conflict or a misunderstanding? Hospitality. Hospitality is full of peace behaviors, mutual recognition, cooperation. So these behaviors have to be practiced in order for us to live in a peaceful society, right? So I look at peace as both a thing that you do, and it's also a state of being, right? So in order for us to have a flourishing society, we need to have this foundation of peace. And as we interact with each other, then it's sort of a flywheel, right? So the more cooperation and collaboration that we have, the more creative that we can be as we come together, people who have different backgrounds, different intellects, different training, that those differences are where the sparks happen, right? Where we can make magic, where we can make amazing things. And as we do that, then that adds to sort of like the bank account of society so that we can do more. So it's a beneficial feedback loop, right? So we need some initial conditions of peace, but then the more we do, the more peace that we build, right? So so we're looking for this reinforcement, and they have to be made easier over time. The founder of the Peace Innovation Lab, Mark Nelson, often says that when we're looking at these episodes of engagement, for instance, that you and I are having at this moment, we're coming together to do something together. In this case, we're doing this podcast. And so it means that you're up in the middle of the night, I'm taking time from my day. We are both making effort and expending resources to do that. Our internet connection, our the software, the computer, all of that. And hopefully it will be a mutually beneficial moment of engagement. And when we have these episodes of engagement, that's where we create value. And the value will be in the podcast. The value will be in the content. And the listener who, or the viewer who sees this might get inspired to do something, right? So then we've created some net positive value in the world by this engagement that's been facilitated by this technology and everything else. But if we try this again and it turns out to cost us more than we get out of it, then it can collapse. And so we're seeing that in the world right now in terms of what's going on, the Straits of Hormuz and the ripple effects for so many countries because they took a lot of things for granted. They took a certain level of cooperation and collaboration for granted. There's an analyst out of Australia that was looking at all the infrastructure and all the supply chains that are breaking, and he said this is the hidden infrastructure of peace, right? So the logistics, the movement of things that's mediated by technology, all of this has created this stable foundation for global societies and global economies to operate. So when I think about digital peace building, I'm not thinking about something that's going to predict whether or not there's going to be conflict in the Congo. That is too small an application. What I'm much more interested in is how do we design technologies and systems that make it easier for us to work together in a way that's mutually beneficial, right? Because if we can do that and we cooperate and collaborate, then we are actually invested in each other's success because you're my counterparty, you're my partner, you're my collaborator. And if you're not thriving, I'm not thriving, right? Because we're working together. So if you're sick, if you're, you don't have enough food, if you don't have a roof over your head, that's going to affect your ability to cooperate and collaborate and engage with me, right? And so I have a vested interest in making sure that you thrive. And given that we live in this interconnected world that's mediated by technology and the internet and now AI, how do we as designers go in and say, how do these technologies that we build, how do they add to our capacity to work together in a successful and mutually fruitful way?
Thank you. Thank you. Uh, Let me get into the next question. New technologies are emerging every single day.
Yes.
How can technology be intentionally designed to encourage empathy, dialogue, and cooperation? And what does behavior design actually mean in this context?
So this is a really great question, and I don't think that it's examined enough, right? So in Silicon Valley, the incentives in terms of how software is designed to engage people, it's interesting. So in social media, it was like, okay, how can we connect people? And then they discovered that outrage um, actually increased engagement, right? Because the metrics that mattered for basically an advertising business model is getting people to see and to react, right? And if you see something that's pleasant or happy or no drama, it probably isn't going to elicit a reaction from you. But if there's something that's outrageous, you feel like, I have to say something about this, right? I have to engage with this because I disagree strongly. And so they accidentally discovered that outrage was compatible with engagement. The Venn diagram on those two overlapped quite a bit. But now we have AI, and if you've used, platforms like ChatGPT or Claude, the engagement psychology is different because they're very empathetic. They're very supportive. But their goal is to have you increase the hours that you spend on the AI, interacting with the AI. But what they found is the psychological strategy is to be positive, to be supportive, to be friendly, to be kind, And I think that's really interesting to observe, right? Because as we interact with AI and then what we're calling a physical, Silicon Valley physical AI, which is robots, um, we need to make them feel non-threatening, right? So the behavior that we want to elicit in humans is not threat and outrage, but one of like, oh, I want to work with you. Oh, you're my friend, right? And so I think it's interesting that these AI platforms are probably, displaying empathy. If you've ever used, most of the use cases for ChatGPT turned out to be therapy and personal development. And so you're telling about your woes about work or friends or relationships, and it has a very sympathetic ear, and right? And so I'm curious, because we're in this huge natural experiment, is as we engage with these AIs and they talk to us softly and kindly, will we change the way we communicate with other people to not be so judgmental, to be kinder, because we've had so much practice interacting with a kind, empathetic AI chatbot.
Wonderful. Thank you, Margarita. Thank you very much. My last question is, we have been working at the intersection of technology and peace for many years. Looking back at your journey, what has been the most challenging part of bringing these two worlds together? And what's keep you motivated to continue?
There are a couple of challenges. One is that when you talk about peace, you have to talk about it very precisely. So if you're talking about peace to business people, to capitalists, to investors, to tech bros, you need to use different words. You can talk about peace, but you can't really use the word peace because it's very triggering for people. They either think, if you're a woman, that so it's almost like it's a beauty pageant cliche to ask beauty Miss America, what do you want in the world? She goes, I want world peace, as she holds her bouquet of flowers, right? So it's a bit of a cliche. It's considered very soft, very squishy, something that's unattainable. And I think part of it is because people are afraid, if you're serious, if you're hard, if you're technical, if you're about numbers, to aspire to something like that. And I think that it takes a lot of courage to say, I actually actively want to create the conditions for peace to emerge in my community. Because it's considered naive. And yet I say to people, when you're walking down the street in many places of the world, did you get to your destination? Oh, yeah. Did you get what you wanted to do? Oh, yeah. It's like, oh, well, you live in a state of peace. If we can go about our business, raise our kids, get dinner on the table, do all those things, we have a level of peace that we live in. And so the question is, how do we open up that circle of peace? And how do we add more things into that container that 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 is about peace? And so now when I talk to people and when I write, I talk about human flourishing. I was like, what would it feel like when you wake up, hypothetically, 5 years from now? And I go, so let me ask you, so it's 5 years from now, and you're waking up, and you're living in this beautiful state of peace. Describe it to me. You open your eyes, and you're in your bed, and you're feeling the softness of those sheets, and you go, oh, I love these sheets, they're so soft. And you have that quiet morning light that's peeking through the windows, and you can hear the bird song outside,
Hmm.
and my partner brings me a cup of coffee in bed. He fluffs up the pillows and says, here's your morning coffee. And I just take in the morning, listening to the bird song, sipping my cup of coffee, maybe checking some emails, or maybe just sitting and listening. And it's that calm. And then what do I do the
Hmm.
rest of the day, right? And so part of creating a peaceful world is we need to activate our imaginations. We need to activate our I want. And then once we have that clear in our head, and once we can clearly articulate it, then we can begin to create it,
Mhm.
right? And I don't think it's naive or thinking too small to say, I want to wake up in this beautiful room with these sheets that are amazing, and the love of my life brings me a cup of coffee. that, I have a pet, that my child is nearby, and and we get to do these things, and I get to go to work, and I get to work on work that is meaningful to me. And I'm working with colleagues, collaborators that are so interesting because they're so different, and I learn so much from them. And when I engage, working with people remotely, I'm fascinated because I go, how amazing it is to be able to have a conversation with someone in Mexico or someone in Sri Lanka, and we have this thing in common, that we've been able to
Mhm.
find each other, and then we can have creative sparks, right? So when we start imagining our life that way and getting it into higher and higher resolution, then we can start to walk toward that. But until we start having those conversations, those very honest, intimate conversations about the world that we actually want to live in, we can't create them. And we need to create this shared dream of what that looks like so we can all collectively walk toward it. Now, the people who want an apocalyptic future, they talk about it all the time. They write about it. They create images. They create film. They create speeches. And so then that's in our head of that's what the future will be. But that's just a story. And then they're actively working on, say, the tech pros in Silicon Valley, like, yeah, Mark Andreessen said, yeah, so people shouldn't examine their lives. Why do you need meaning and purpose? And I'm going like, really? Why is everyone listening to that guy? Why are we giving him any attention at all? Direct our attention to the people who are speaking out loud the thing that we most desire. And how does technology come into this? How does AI come into this? The way we direct it. What is our intention with it? What do we want to build with it? But it really comes from here and from here to build the world that we want to have. And the rest of it is just tools. They're like hammers and nails. What are you going to build with it?
Yeah, exactly. It's a beautiful world. Something, something better than this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or you
your
could say,
tools
I
bring
love this and I want to make it 10% better.
right. Exactly.
You know? I want to paint
Exactly.
that wall. It's like, what can I do?
Oh,
Well,
thank-
maybe it's the little things. Maybe I want to
you
plant a garden. Maybe I want to plant a tree. Oh, that's 10% better. Now I have shade. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Sometimes I think we
right.
make things too complicated. Yeah. So think
Correct.
about those concentric circles of peace, just like the
Right.
concentric circles of love and the concentric circles of empathy. Start here and then expand. And then maybe all our circles will overlap, right?
Right. So somebody told me that a small step at a time. So exactly.
Yeah. Even imperfect.
Right.
Yeah. Smart people can be in their heads too much. I know I'm guilty of this. If you get overeducated and you're thinking, 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 but you never take action in the world,
Right.
right? And then there are other people who don't think and they just sort of like, they're just out there flailing in the world, but they go further because they're learning as they take action. Oh, that didn't work. So let me try it. Step back. Let me try again. Let me do this. Let me course correct, right? They're wayfaring through the world, but they're moving through the world. So I like to think and I like to analyze, but I have to, at least for me, be very mindful that I don't get so deep into that I never take action, right? You're a barista, you work in a store, you work in a factory. All they are all opportunities to create peace in that locality, of creating trust, of creating reciprocity, of creating kindness, of hospitality. Hospitality is, I go to a store and I get two Coca-Colas and I give you one, right? And you go, oh, thank you. It's an act of kindness. Oh, she thought of me. She saw me, right? Everyone wants to be seen, heard, and understood. It doesn't require diplomats and heads of state for us to create those moments of peace.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Margarita. Thank you very much for this insightful conversation. I really appreciate it. Thank you very
Oh, you're
much.
welcome. You're most welcome.